Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Uh, really excited to have Mike Mihajcek and Adam Krieger here today to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Really, the presenting the value of an enterprise analytics platform and some of the best practices and gotchas and things to watch out for as you implement that throughout your organization. So today we will be recording this webinar and make the slides available to you afterwards so that you could share it with your coworkers if you desire or reference it later. So with that, please welcome Adam Krieger, the CEO of QuickLaunch Analytics, to kick things off.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is super excited to participate here with Mike, who is really going to be the star of the show. So looking forward to getting to that as quickly as possible. But yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly around, your data and data strategy and how you can really transform your business. I think you'll be excited or really appreciate Mike's experience here. Mike is the Vice President of Enterprise Applications at URUS. He'll give a more introduction of himself, but we're very fortunate. Mike is kind of a unique, um, uh, I guess, advisor here because he's got a ton of experience in the data and application and business space. So his perspective is quite different than most, and so excited to get that in front of you. And I was fortunate enough to witnessed Mike presenting the similar presentation at a recent conference, in focus conference a few months back. And now the fact that we can get the same, you get to experience the same, beyond the audience of just that conference. So a little bit by myself. Again, I'm the CEO of QuickLaunch Analytics. You may have previously known us as Preferred Strategies. Um, Go to the next slide, Mike. Yeah, so really I want to start with a little bit about what's the enterprise data dilemma, and then go to a little bit of overview about us as an organization, and then pass it over to Mike. But really, if you look at this, nothing's easy, right? I think Mike will speak to the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you'll get that firsthand. But as we all have all variety of applications, you might have your ERP, you've got your CRM, you've got HR. You've got a point of sale system, you've got, all these different applications on people's mobile devices, servers in the cloud. And so all these applications somehow are all storing some data, right? So you've got data in each of those kind of in some way of silos, but there's also then data in spreadsheets. So now you've got to somehow wrangle all that data, and that's just getting exponentially growing day by day. So you've got this data, you got to figure out how to make sense of it, and you're going to use technology to do that. So how do you pick the technologies? And the technologies in the modern analytics, world that we live in are changing weekly or monthly. So you got to keep up with those, and how are you making sure that the trends out there, which are real, which are a little bit of hype, and how do you manage that? And then deploy it in a way in your organization that you can actually get the users to adopt it, right? So we got to find, the people that have the experience and the talent, the ability to understand data. So you might also need to probably extend that with partners, or as you look to hire people. And so it becomes a challenge to get um, enough support with these, leading edge technologies that Mike's going to speak about as well. And then once you have all that figured out, the question is it governed? Is it secure? It's when we start getting into analytics and down, in the AI and everything else, you don't get too many opportunities to mess that up, right? So you got to make sure that everything you're doing is governed, and that people should only see what they're supposed to. Next slide. A little bit about us. Again, we're about 35 people, and we're located or headquartered in California, in the kind of Silicon Valley area. And we've got team members scattered across the country in at least the United States, and I think 18 different states. But really our focus is to help companies, figure out how to get all their data, build pipelines to centralize that data using modern lakehouses, building semantic models on top of that to basically get the governance, get the metrics, get the consistency of data, and then deploy those with the modern analytics tech stacks, typically Power BI, but then whatever surrounds that with things like Databricks, and now with AI that is expanding beyond just something like Power BI. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. Again, excited to uh, be here with Mike, and thank you, Mike, so much for walking us through your experience at URUS, Alta Genetics, and um, take it away, Mike.
All right, thanks a lot, Adam. Just to introduce myself again, my name is Mike Mahajek. I'm the VP of Enterprise Applications at URUS, and we'll talk a little bit about what URUS does here in a sec. Been with the company for 4 years, but been working in the JD Edwards space for around the last 20 years or so. The data and our use of QuickLaunch is really focused around our single instance of JD Edwards. So we serve finance, sales, and supply chain across 25 companies in 13 countries on 5 continents. We've got kind of a global reach from the ERP side. URUS is a group of companies that provides genetics and AI services to dairy and beef farmers around the globe. So I would say our AI is the original AI, artificial insemination. But that's a little bit about kind of in a nutshell what we do. We do this through 9 different brands that bring a little bit something different to the dairy and beef world. Some of the brands, Altagenix, some of Genetics Australia, deal in the creating genetic plans with farmers, selling frozen semen, and doing insemination services and other products. We have companies that do the genetics behind that. So this is building the better cattle. So that's through selective breeding mostly, and some other technologies as well. We've got a company that collects colostrum. So this is the extra milk from dairy cows in those first days that they're giving milk, powders that and sells it back to dairy farmers around the world who have maybe some issues getting the nutrition into their cows and growing calves successfully. So that's a big help in the dairy industry anyway. We have a company that does embryology and more of the genetics at the DNA level of cows. So we're looking to produce cows with traits that will help survive as the world is changing. And then there's a software company. So the bottom left there, Valley software produces software that helps the dairy farmers manage their operations and kind of their day-to-day work environment. Our corporate responsibility goals kind of as a company center around 3 things. So the first is ending hunger by providing genetics and knowledge to dairy and beef farmers around the world to make sure that they're effectively able to produce enough to feed the citizens of the world. We also look to build more productive cattle and sustainable cattle in a sustainable way and help protect the planet as we grow kind of bigger and bigger in population. And finally, bringing genetics and knowledge to developing countries so that farmers and ranchers in those countries are able to kind of earn a living for themselves and their families and end poverty in that way. So it's a little bit more of the heart and soul of URUS and what's behind us. I wanted to anchor this presentation around something to keep things interesting. And so I chose the classic, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a spaghetti Western made in the 60s. It's set during the American Civil War, and it follows 3 guys. So the good is Blondie, Angel Eyes, and Tuco. And they're on the hunt for Confederate gold buried in a cemetery. That's the entire movie. The thing about a spaghetti Western is there's lots of kind of overarching and deeper things. And if you took a film class and they dove into this, they would say, look for greed versus morality, war as a background, chaos to life, and kind of this ambiguity of justice and kind of the blurring the lines of what's right and wrong. A lot of parallels that you can draw between those themes in the movie and building that data practice, right? It might be the greed for data, or it might be the holding on to of data, the constant chaos of the operations and just how the business runs while we're trying to produce and send out meaningful data in a timely manner. There are lots of stretches you can make in these, and I won't go into too much about that, because I want to start now where the movie starts. And really, there's treasure out there. So there is treasure out there. Just like the promise of finding riches buried in the Confederate cemetery, there is the promise of unearthing a treasure trove of data from within your organization. You've heard the old adage that if you have an infinite number of monkeys typing on an infinite number of keyboards, that one of them is going to write Shakespeare's Hamlet. There's going to be a lot of noise on those other keyboards, but within that theoretical room of infinite work, there's a masterpiece. There's more than one masterpiece. Every book ever written, every song ever written. In our organizations, something similar is going on, not to that scale, of course, but you've got all of these transactions being entered into all the different systems by all these different departments and people and different companies for us around the world. You're collecting data from IoT devices, and all of this data that's coming in tells the story of the company. It doesn't tell us about corporate culture, mission statements, but it allows us to collect the who, what, when, and where, I like to say, of the transactional history of the company. Now, for me and for most companies that don't have a developed data practice, this begins with spending a lot of time pulling data out of JD Edwards, whether that's through data browser, or you're doing a SQL query, or you're running an SSRS report to pull out data, taking all those spreadsheets, mixing them together with VLOOKUPs and formulas so you can add a little bit of context to what you're bringing out. And then you can deliver this beautiful spreadsheet that's probably a week or more old to the business, who's probably already found the answer to the question they were looking for or gave up trying. Because what the business really wants to answer is how and what if. The how and the what if is sort of how you spend that digital gold. It's the value you get from it. The who, what, when, where, that's the gold. But how you spend that treasure is to answer the questions of why and of what if. And these are the $1 million questions that people are asking that the data really feeds. At URUS, QuickLaunch is the treasure map that we use to unearth that digital gold within JD Edwards. So I'll say it again because it's kind of probably a bold statement, but you'll get it in a second. So it provides that treasure map that we're going to use to unearth the digital gold within JD. Our treasure map looks a little bit something like this. So it's the logical architecture of how our data world works as it pertains to QuickLaunch. So around JD Edwards, around the production database on the far left-hand side, see if I can get this. We build the big wall, and we say nothing comes in or out of the production database without really strict controls and governance and without us knowing about it. This includes people accessing data for reporting. So as part of that wall, we replicate our production data into a replicated database. So what this does is it allows us to give access a little bit more freely to reporting systems and other tools, and protects the performance of JD Edwards, frankly, and the kind of the sanctity of that production data that's there. So this happens in a near real-time basis. From there, it goes through change data capture logging and makes it into our Databricks environment. From within our Databricks environment, we build out the QuickLaunch tabular model. So this would be the semantic model that's used in Power BI that we write reports against. And then for our end users in the business, we'll publish those reports to applications within Power BI, and that's how we get the data to our users. Accounting, so accountants being accountants are always going to use their spreadsheets, and we still haven't cracked that nut, but they can also connect their spreadsheets to that semantic model and pull data in and do the work that they need to do there as well. There's two other paths that our data can take. So from the replicated data, for information that doesn't go through QuickLaunch, we use a testing ground of just building kind of our own custom models through the Power BI gateway. And we'll do this to test things out. So a lot of times, if we're going to add something to the QuickLaunch data model, we'll test it out through a gateway. So this might be things like we want to report on security. We want to report on OMW projects and what the status of our different projects are, link that in with some data from our project management system. So things like that we'll test out in the gateway. And then if they prove valuable enough and reusable enough and make sense to add it to the QuickLaunch model, we do that. The other thing we do is we'll take the data and we'll move it up to a share so that the URUS data platform can access that information. So this is the team that's pulling data not just from the ERP world and the QuickLaunch world, but it's also pulling data from our production systems, other ERPs, some of the stuff that Adam was talking about, our CRM and things like that, and combining that data for more summary level reporting. This refresh goes through, or this data goes through a couple of refreshes. So we bring in partial data refreshes every hour. So this is for finance information because the finance information and some of the inventory information needs to be a little bit more timely based on the type of reports that we run. So between 7 and 5 a.m. every 15 minutes or so. So there's two parts to the refresh. So first part is refreshing the data into our Databricks world. And then the second part of the refresh is what gets it into the semantic model and available for reports. So that takes about 45 minutes total to run. And then we do a full daily refresh in the evening that takes about 2 hours to run. So you kind of got that right, and you can kind of scratch your head a little bit, and I scratch my head too sometimes when I think that every hour we kick off a process that runs for 45 minutes. But we'll talk about that in a couple slides here too. But this is that treasure map. Some of the treasure that we've unearthed. So I break it up into things that we do in the front office and things that we do in the back office, but just to get you some ideas. So financial reporting, we'll do our P&L balance sheet is all built off of data that comes through QuickLaunch. Budgeting and planning is done right now through one of those gateway queries, but we're moving it into QuickLaunch. So bringing in the budget ledgers and the forecast ledgers and bringing all that to bear. Cash forecasting, AR metrics, AP metrics, kind of some of the more standard things that people do. Our sales reporting all comes out of QuickLaunch, inventory management, and then some of the information that we send to the data platform is a global customer reporting. So this takes all the customers from all the different companies that are operating, whether they're using JD Edwards or not, and kind of assigns them one unique ID so that you can have a view of, this customer is actually these 9 customers, which is really, really helpful when you're trying to do, especially sales reporting and understanding spend and things like that. In the back office, we've used QuickLaunch extensively for things like data integrity. We're using data for JD data and Power BI for security management, for object usage tracking. So there's great information in object usage tracking and bringing that information into Power BI and letting someone say, okay, I see you have an issue. I can use object tracking to see exactly where you've been and when you've been there. And that helps tell a part of the story that helps us support our users. Usage metrics are really, really important, especially as you're building reports. So the usage metrics that I'm talking about are who's looking at the reports that are built, how many times are they being looked at, even down to what pages on the different reports are being looked at. This helps you manage the life cycle of the reports and is a really important part of kind of the governance of reports in general. And then I mentioned a little bit before OMW management, so understanding what OMW projects are in which status and which environments and what's ready to go and have they been deployed and things like that as well. We can do some alerting and some reporting off of that we do. One example that I'll show is a little bit on the integrity checks and the value really of bringing integrity checks to the forefront. And what I mean is just visualizing the issues that are out there. So when we first started, we'd have SQL agent jobs that would run. They would check all of the all the parameters and everything that we've said a customer record should have. And it would say, here's 50 things you need to go fix. And that would get emailed out once a week. Those emails would get ignored, and the numbers would grow and grow and grow. So what we did is using QuickLaunch and Power BI, we built a dashboard that put that information right in front of the users, right when they log into JD. So having this embedded in an E1 page in JD Edwards means that when the people responsible for Alta Germany address book integrity checks, in this example, log in, this is what they're confronted with. And the really helpful kind of human factors part of it is having this little graph up here that just shows over time, are you getting better or are you getting worse? How is the data looking? And you can see when we first went live, we'd have around 870 issues with customer records and with supplier records. So we're sitting around 1,600, 1,700 issues with records. And within, we had a month training, a month, hey, remember, a month, and you can start to see the activities really started to drive this down to now when we're looking at essentially they're the errors that may have been created a day or two before. So whenever this was recorded or I took this screenshot, we would have been sitting at 3 errors on customers and 5 errors on suppliers. What our guys can do is they'll click on the error that they want to look at, click the button next to it, and it'll take them into more details and tell them, here's the issue, here's the resolution, and here's why it's important. Having that here's why that's important was a big key for us because it kind of answers the so what of like, oh, come on, you're telling me I have to put in a banking information for suppliers. This is ridiculous. It's like, well, if you've got them set up as a EFT payment instrument and you don't have banking information, they're not going to get their money. So that one's pretty obvious, but there's some other ones that are more subtle that you can really explain. And we use this data to actually do this. So it's really important. That's one of the bigger successes we've had with that. Bringing it back to the Western theme, along with that architecture, along with that treasure map, there's booby traps. So there's what I call the dirty dozen failure points of moving all of this information through the different technologies. Each one of these bubbles represent a possible failure point. So failure to collect data, failure to get it into Databricks, into the data lake, or failure to refresh either the data model or the reports or spreadsheets that are using them. I've been impacted by every single one of these, or we have. We've learned from them. We've adapted because of the issues that have come up. The scars that we've earned from living through that make us strong. They're challenges, and they're what we use to build the muscle around building out and supporting our data environment. Having a partner like QuickLaunch to be able to go back to and say, hey, this is happening. I've never seen it before. Can you help me dive into the details a little bit? And having a strong internal IT organization as well really helps us move through these things quickly, but they're going to happen. You can't avoid issues from popping up. You can't deliver a bulletproof solution on the first attempt because everybody's environment is different, and you just have to be ready to react quickly. Now, I was really interested to hear earlier this week, there was a user group that QuickLaunch Analytics put on and announced some interesting things around Fabric SQL mirroring. So I'm kind of interested to see if there's a shortcut in our map here that we can take in the future and address some of these things with new technologies that become available. So we'll dive a tiny bit into the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we'll stay true to the name of the presentation. The good news is you're going to make a lot of people really happy with the data program. So some of what we bring to the table with the data program, we can provide data and we can add value really quickly. So questions that people have, do you have the data to answer those questions at your fingertips? This is really powerful. What to be ready for is it's going to open the floodgates of requests. There'll be more requests for ad hoc reports, or what our COO likes to call recreational dashboarding, then you can handle. And recreational dashboarding is good if you're wanting to kind of pick and learn and view what's going on there. But when you have a backlog of actual operational or strategic reports that you need to write, you just have to watch out for that and be aware. Another good thing, people are going to start accessing the data and they're going to start playing with it. What you want to be ready for that is you need a community where people can come together and collaborate, talk about their use cases. What filters did you use? I got a 7. Why didn't I get a 5? I thought I would get a 5. And having that community of users that can work together and build off of each other, it's the best way, I say, to foster innovation and collaboration, and allows me to get out of the way and kind of let them flourish as a community. Another good, we're going to start a revolution. Having all the data available, and whether you decide to democratize the data or have citizen development or not, what we see is an explosion of workspaces, an explosion of reports. Think through this. So we did that purposely, and we knew that we were going to see this in the first months, and that again was really to just drive excitement and get people interested in the capabilities that we have. But thinking about things like workspace administration, testing, and doing validation on the reports that are getting built out, supporting not just the architecture of the analytics world, but the reports themselves. An intake process, a standard intake process to kind of manage all the work that's coming in. These are the things that we kind of developed and learned a lot from other people in the communities, so that when we were ready to get, I don't want to say serious, but when we were ready to kind of put a little bit more meat behind, we have a data program with QuickLaunch. These are the sorts of things that we were ready with. It gets us to the bad. So angel eyes here. You're going to disappoint a lot of people. You know, we heard people say it's too hard to build reports. The filters are too complicated. Can't you make it simple? I don't know what an order activity rule is. Why should I have to know the difference between 520 or 580 and 620? To kind of get around this, we built some preset filter conditions. We did this at the database level as data was coming into QuickLaunch, so where we could say, you know, something really simple. So customer, yes, no. So what that does is we can see our third-party retail customers, we can see our wholesale customers. It takes out transfers to branches, it takes out intercompany transactions. Those types of things we can just filter out with a yes, no button or a flag. So the people that want that info can get to it, and the people that want a simplified view or a simplified way to filter can have that too. We did that through with sales as well. So whether that was on the branch side or the sale itself, this was really, really handy, and just kind of a pro tip there. We heard people say a lot of, you know, I could do a better job if I just had this report. So I kind of hide behind, if I knew this, I could be a lot better than I am. And then when you deliver that stuff, you kind of expect to see that change behavior. And sometimes you deliver something that never gets looked at. Sometimes you get a report that's just gold and people take off and it's like amazing, amazing, amazing. But for us, you know, reinforcing what people already know and what people can get to, like we're working on this report. It could take a month based on where it is in the backlog, but did you know that you could get to the same information directly within JD Edwards? So you can see customer AR in JD. You don't need a report to show you that. This lets us prioritize the deliverables based on benefit. And it also helps build that strong community, because again, people can in our world, people can build these reports themselves, or they can go to a centralized like departmental report writing group who can build reports for sales or finance or supply chain or whatever the subject matter is. We heard people say the data, if I've built a spreadsheet, so these are mostly in the accounting world, they've built a spreadsheet and there's 50 tabs on it. And when I refresh it, it takes forever. It's taken 30, 40 minutes, an hour. There's techniques around creating desktop connections to the spreadsheets versus like online ODBC connections. there's some tips and tricks in there that we've been able to kind of work with them and find what works best for which situation. Everybody wants real-time data. So we hear a lot of the data's too old, I want it faster. This is a big education piece. So until perhaps recently, getting near real-time data available in a report is a really costly thing to do. So being able to educate on what's an operational report versus what's analysis. So if you're doing analysis, you're looking at trends, you're looking over time, that data needs to only be refreshed maybe once a week, once a month, depending on what you're looking at. If you're making operational decisions, so these would be things in our world, it's like inventory, or it would be like finance when it comes to month end, and they're using that QuickLaunch data to extract information and upload to our consolidated financial system. That gets a little bit more sensitive. The other one was because we do partial refreshes and we do full refreshes, the last refresh date and time that's in the QuickLaunch world doesn't always reflect maybe the information that you're looking at. So the last refresh date and time is accurate if you're looking at finance information. It's accurate if you're looking at some sales information, but not so much if you're looking at AP or if you're looking at AR or things like that. So having tooltips and having just little information bubbles to be able to show people when they come into report, if you want to know more about the data on this page, hover over here, and we can bring up and kind of display a lot of information that way. The ugly, to go, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So I mentioned a little bit before the explosion of workspaces with little understanding of how to administer the workspaces, how to administer reports. It builds a bit of a Wild West to kind of build on the theme. It builds a lot of excitement. Just be ready to rein it in. So if that's a strategy that you're going to go with, so you can do a couple things, you can be really controlled and let some reports kind of trickle out through a centralized report writing. And that's a fantastic way to go. We knew we wanted to democratize down the road. So we wanted to start building champions within different departments that would be kind of empowered to build and work with these reports. But if you have your eyes open going in, that's what matters. Another thing that drove us crazy is, well-intentioned things like changing a UDC description seems pretty minor when you're working within JD Edwards itself. But when you got 50 reports that use that UDC description as a filter, once you've changed that, now you've broken 50 reports. So teaching the best practice of filtering on UDC codes, not descriptions, communicating when these changes happen so that people who do have reports that they're writing have the opportunity to update them if it impacts them. These are all things that we learn as we go on. But there are a lot of moving parts. So that's something that you need to kind of wrap your head around and be ready for. In summary, having a tool that pulls the right data from JD in the right business language at the right frequency is going to greatly accelerate the value you're going to get from that digital gold. So if you know going in what you're wanting to get out, it helps a lot. Do look for opportunities to build both business facing and back office or support and use cases for the data you've been producing. There's just as much gold in the back office as there is in the front office. And then finally, if your organization doesn't currently have a data practice or standards, be prepared to be patient or reach out to other organizations that have this and have lived through kind of some of the battles. Healthy data culture is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. You're going to grow and you're going to end up stronger when you started. So if you maintain that growth mindset, I know you have great things coming in the future. Thanks, Adam.
Awesome. So actually, I was taking some notes, Mike, while you were speaking. So just go through that, and a couple questions for you, just to get more insight. Awesome. And even from I witnessed this a couple months ago, I've actually picked out a few things that I had missed that first time through. So thank you again for sharing the experience. But first thing, my note was I didn't know what a spaghetti Western was. So I had to go Google that. So as I was reading
Yes,
online, what a spaghetti western. Do you want to share? Make it, Mike. What's a spaghetti western?
sure. So one of the things that makes a spaghetti western is that they're directed and filmed mostly in Italy and outside of the U.S. So they kind of adopted that name.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a pickup. And as I was reading that, you were then talking about Excel and the spreadsheets and the VLOOKUPs and all this crazy, UTB table browser extracts. I'm like, oh, so now there's spaghetti analytics. Is what the thought that came to my mind was we're talking about Excel, which we all love, I guess, that
Absolutely.
spaghetti Excel analytics. I remember this from the first time around, but it did maybe realize the integrity checks, right? Like that seems so huge when you look at those volumes and how tiny the issues, open issues are, and the fact that you can then trail people back to fix the problem, right? It's not just this black box, it's becoming another black box. It's okay, here's how you can go and action it and fix it. But it did make me, this comes up a lot with companies we speak with that have been live for several years and they know that their data has issues. And so when people say, well, we can't do anything with AI or can't do anything with analytics or reporting until we clean our data. So we're going to go clean our data and then we'll look at something like, a modern tech around reporting and analytics. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, is that, you know, what would you suggest for people that are thinking that way? Got to clean my
Yeah,
data.
when if I tied it back to that kind of greed versus morality, it kind of ties to that last one on the screen, which was an ambiguity of justice. And not having perfect data is it does mean that that the results that you're looking for may not be 100% accurate and ready to go, but directionally it's going to be correct. And what we found is there's a lot of data that, or a lot of value you can get from looking at directionally correct information. And as long as you are kind of building towards having that clean data, whether it's master data or transactional data, the journey takes a while. So getting your feet wet and getting started as soon as you can, and in parallel with data cleanups, for us was the path that we took, and it proved very, very useful, because then when the data was at a quality that the business was ready to really make some key decisions with, we were ready to respond. We knew how to use the tool, we knew how to manage the workspaces and reports, and so I'd say better to start with a little bit of ambiguity than wait to perfection.
Awesome. No, I love that. I'm not done yet. I like you spoke about, the community, right? And that being like fostering the innovation at URUS. And I think that's so critical, right? At the end of the day, there's change management, there's adoption, but like establishing that community is, so I love that. I don't know if any other final comments on that, but that was another thing that I really was
You know,
resonating.
yeah, it's tricky because everybody wants everybody wants to write the reports. Everybody wants the outputs, but it really takes a certain mindset. So it takes a certain amount of patience, a certain amount of curiosity, a certain amount of creativity to really do it well. So we'd have a flood of people coming into the community, and then you'd really start to see people kind of self-select out, like, oh man, this is either more difficult, or some people would be like, oh, this is amazing. I love solving these problems and asking these questions. And so it's another one of those things, just to don't be it's sort of like ratatouille, right? A great report writer can come from anywhere, so be looking for those gems that are out there.
And on that note, actually, it was one of our prior discussions that you and I had, that was what I've been chewing on for months. But there's these, again, you mentioned it's challenging, it's difficult. You got different types of users, from administrators, you've got report authors and analysts that this is great, I love it, I can do so much. Then you got consumers that literally just, give me what I need. I maybe grab a slicer here or there and get the value, and I'm good. And then there's that in between. I think that's where you and I were speaking in the past about, there's still people that might go and extract from table browser, or because you exposed it to too much, and then it's just too much for them to understand. And so, mentioning our user group just this week, I don't know if you saw the personalized, but that was something that was really driven based on some of our discussion. I'd love to get your feedback on
Yeah,
that, where
yeah,
simplifying, okay, look, this user should only really be seeing these things, and
yeah,
then having a starting point that you know gets them that information that now might be happening through several steps, extracts that maybe still getting some of that information. So anyways, that's something we can follow up on. But the and I guess that kind of leads to, you mentioned like starting a revolution, that resonated. Democratizing data, right? Which is all kind of, at the end of the day, it's in all these things and however you need to get to it. But that was huge. I do like you mentioned about, to simplify some of that because, like you said, are you a customer? Yes or no? Are you a supplier? Like some of those things are it's not just one field. Sometimes it's a combination of things. And so that's where it gets challenging is if some criteria is really three different elements and somebody thinks and doesn't realize it was three and only grab two, and all of a sudden they're not getting, and even getting multiple filters kind of to come together can be challenging. And so I could see how that would be, making sure it's easy for people. I want this to be filtered down and exclude transfers and, like we were saying, customers or external customers and so on. So I thought
mm.
I
And
love that. Any other thoughts
Adam,
on?
on that one, just to build on that a little bit too, the other important part is where you do that activity. So doing that in a measure versus doing that on the database before the data comes in, it makes a huge difference in the speed that a report can run. So again, you're going to learn lessons there, but there's a right time and a right place, especially to do some of that stuff.
Love it. And you just taught me something. So once again, Mike, like I said, I'm in awe of the time we spend time together. And then that was good tip on the filtering because right, UDC descriptions may change, and if you have all your reports going on that, and it's like, oh well, somebody comes in and says, oh, we want to change that, and not thinking the downward impact, where that is. So that's definitely a good advice. So I have a little funny story as we wrap it up. And so this is actually Marla Nelson, who's our CTO. She was at just a couple months ago, a volunteer event. I don't know if you've heard this already, Mike. Have you heard this story?
No, I don't think so.
And she's at this volunteer event, and you met this, nice gentleman, and they were chatting, and he was saying, "Oh, what do you do?" And she says, "Well, our company, we do, data and analytics and AI for companies." "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And she said, "Well, what do you do?" He's like, "Well, I work for Alta Genetics." Right? And so we do like artificial insemination. Marla's like, "Oh, well, that's actually you're one of our customers." So they were
Oh.
chatting. So I don't know the gentleman's name, but he made the comment to Marla, "Oh, so you do AI for AI, right?" So it was just the
That's
artificial
it.
intelligence
Yeah.
and artificial intelligence. So anyways, I thought it was a funny story. She came back, they worked the next week and was just telling all of us. Small world. Just looking on this slide here, if there's any more information that you have or you have questions, we'd love to hear from you. And Mike, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, and true gold is what you shared today. So we can't thank you enough for sharing that.
Awesome.
I'll give you the
Thanks
final
a lot,
word,
Adam.
Mike.
Nope, that was it. Just thanks for the opportunity. I think when you can hear from people that have gone through it and either have the scars or have found that digital gold and spent it on some truly valuable things, it makes the difference. It made the difference for us in our quick launch journey and our data journey. And so hopefully someone out there will get a little bit of value out of this too.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mike. We'll
Thanks a
be in
lot,
touch.
guys.
All right. See y'all.